Welcome to the Kayak Fishing Obsessed Podcast. We'll be sitting down with a fresh guest each week. Someone who shares the same kayak fishing passion that runs through our veins. We're talking kayak anglers, kayak companies, lure experts. Heck, anyone who's got a story to tell about landing the big ones from a kayak. We're setting our sights on becoming the #1 kayak fishing podcast in the world. You'll get a chuckle, a grin, and hey, maybe even a belly laugh. Because we believe in the power of humor. But above all, we're here to educate and inspire. So, whether you're a seasoned kayak angler or just dipping your toes into this exhilarating world, join us on the Kayak Fishing Obsessed Podcast. It's time to reel in adventure, camaraderie, and the joy of the catch. Here's your host, Darren Wendell.
What is up, everyone? And as you can see, my name is not Darren Wendell. He is not.
Nor
here.
is mine.
No, nor is that person there. He is not Darren Wendell. So the actual host of the show is not here. So he left it to me this week and my co-host Chad Hoover to run this show. And before we get started, Chad, I just want to give a shout out to our show partner, Dark Horse Tackle. Before they're even a partner, I use them. We have them on the show. I've won multiple events. I got second in a Bassmaster event up there on Dale Hollow using their baits. So check out Dark Horse Tackle. I believe it's darkhorsetackle.com. Great company. Chad, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Let me stayed up last night until I stayed up until this morning, till about 5 o'clock, working on the KFAS, or the Kayak Fishing Advanced Safety Training Curriculum, which is a project that I'm actually launching with the real host of this show, Mr. Darren Wendell. And he is over in Canada, up in the Pacific Northwest, with my son Austin and a bunch of other crazies, the Paul and Jeff from Aggressively Average Anglers, and Wade from Yak Attack, and Keith Stevenson from Kayak Angler, and a bunch of other people over there chasing some salmon and some lean cod and some kind of bass that they catch on kelp beds and a bunch of other stuff. And unfortunately, I had a little health situation going on, had to bow out of the trip, but it's allowing me to kind of focus and get the core curriculum done for the Kayak Fishing Advanced Safety Training, which we'll talk a little more about in a future podcast and in the future. But that's what I've been doing. I've been writing. So, yeah.
So you've been a little bit bored then, it sounds like. Nothing
yeah, I mean, the rain has kept me off the water for the most part. I mean, not that the fish ain't already wet, and not that I don't got great rain gear and all that good stuff. I just I've needed an excuse to work on this, and that's as good of an excuse as any. And the rivers are kind of swelling up, but as soon as they cleared up, I'm doing a couple of overnight kayak fishing, camping type thingamajiggers, which is really my true jam. So I've been doing a lot of planning for that as well, putting the pieces together, stretching out the old hammocks, getting out the sleeping pads, and putting together the piece parts of going on those adventures as soon as I clear this monumental assignment I have to finish. So, yeah.
Got this. Well, tonight, what do we have? We're going to discuss the future of competitive bass fishing, and no two greater people to have on here in competitive bass fishing than Mr. Chad Hoover and our guest, Mr. Steve Owens. And I'm going to bring him to the stage here. And I'm kind of going to turn this over to Chad and Steve, folks, for the people that are listening in. Let's go. Here he is.
I mean, we're going to yank you back in.
Yeah.
Every now and then.
Bam, there he is.
Hey, look at that. That worked out like a pro. So
almost.
Well, Steve, welcome to the show, man. I would introduce you myself, but I think I would fall short of the mark. So why don't you give us your official title, credentials? I mean, obviously everybody can see Steve Owens on the screen, but give us the who Steve Owens is elevator pitch, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm Steve Owens. I live in Tennessee. I'm a tournament director. I operate the Bassmaster Kayak Series along with Georgia Bass Nation, Tennessee Bass Nation, and I run the pro staff for Dugout Bait and Tackle, and I do some purchasing and obviously sales and marketing promotional stuff. But just got started in kayak fishing. I don't know. I don't keep up with years very well, but I was looking back the other day. I think it was like 2014-ish. And then no, it's 2013. And then I think 2014, you started coming around with KBF and I helped you with some tournaments on Chick and Gunnersville. And it just kind of just took off from there.
Yeah. So
and I get to fish every now and again. So
yeah, I appreciate that deal. Man, listen, I'm going to say before we get into the whole thing, I really want to talk about the future of kayak fishing competition more than the past. But obviously, like you mentioned, I moved to Tennessee myself in 2012 when I retired from the Navy. We had launched the kayak bass fishing catch photo release series over on Sandy Cooper, then moved it to Kentucky Lake, got the support of the Tourism Bureau there and a bunch of great sponsors, was able to do some stuff to kind of create the powder keg moment of like getting the interest in it and all that good stuff. But it was guys like yourself that served as regional directors for KBF. You were also running your own clubs over there in the East Tennessee area and doing all that kind of stuff. And so everybody played their part, right? Everybody played their role, and none of us could have done it without the other ones. I get a lot of, oh, dude, you did this, you did that. And I appreciate all that. But more than that, what I'm excited about is the fact I don't have to do it anymore, because if there's anybody else on this podcast that understands what you go through, you also conversely understand what I went through carrying that damn boulder for about 12 years, and it ain't fun. So I do not envy you, because I know that you only hear from the people complaining. You only hear from the people that need something. You constantly get reached out to from people asking you questions, and you say to yourself, I spent 40 hours building a document that lays all this out, so I don't have to answer this question 500 times, but yet you do. So I just wanted to say, I know that you understand what I went through, and I probably nobody in the country that understands what you're going through, have gone through, and will go through better than yours truly. And that's not any kind of pat on my own back. I'm saying thank you for picking up the torch and running with it. We all, about 5 years ago, we're all passionate, and everybody was trying to tear this thing in different directions. And, Hobie did a great thing. You guys have done a great thing. I think we did some great things at KBF. But the beautiful thing about it is I think we've kind of settled in on, I personally love the charity stuff and the virtual stuff and the kind of the new angler stuff, which I feel plays a role. And then I'll be honest with all of y'all, I never really liked the trying to go super pro, the pro series stuff and all that, because people were dragging me into it kicking and screaming. And Steve, you can attest to this. You always got 1,000 people in your ear. And especially for me, when I first got started, everything that sounded like a good idea, I wanted to do it. So I applaud you in your efforts and the things that you've done with Bassmaster in not trying to go too crazy big, too fast, and managing a really good series, keeping a really good turnout, not having any real drama. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that stuff. And I really think incrementally Bassmaster, the media enterprise has done a better and better job year over year, including the kayak fishing content in its actual, bigger bubble media. And I think that that's really what we need to get that professional piece to the next level. So I'll shut up now and I want to turn it over to you. I'd like for you to give us a little bit of how did you get involved with the Bassmaster series? Give us a kind of a lay of the land of what it is for the folks that not necessarily, into the whole competitive fishing. Like what events have you had so far this year? What events do you have left for this year? And then after that, we'll talk about some of the future stuff, which is the topic of the show. So take it on. Take it away, I should say.
Well, the Newport Bassmaster Kayak Series presented by Native Watercraft is it's one of the national trail series that we have. We're not a professional trail series. We're all still an open series. We don't have a professional level series yet, which professional level means, you buy all in and that's all you fish for a living essentially in a year, it seems like. But got started with Bassmaster during the development when Dwayne Wally and the guys started it. Reached out to me because I had done the big Chickamauga and Gunnersville KBF events, and we had grown our grassroots club here on Lake Chickamauga. It was myself and Seth Lassiter, Ryan Lambert, and some others. We built TVKA, which is part of CAST, a Tennessee group of clubs, and our club was pretty successful, largely in part because we got to partner with the KBF events. So when Jody Queen and all of the Jay Wallens and all of those guys come into town, they would double dip into our tournaments, and it gave us notoriety. So that literally when people were driving to and from other places, they would check in on us and see if we had an event. So we always had national level competition across the state of Tennessee, number one, but especially our grassroots club. And then got asked to help format the Bassmaster series, and I ran the first championship we had was on Logan Martin. It was an open championship. I think we had 227 in it. I think you fished it. The flood monsoon down there in Alabama, right as COVID hit, and then during that season we had 4 events. I think it was maybe 5, but I run the Chickamauga event, and then I had to step away just because I had so much else going on and worked a regular 9 to 5. So I had to step away. I didn't have time to help do what I felt like it needed to do, which is because we all try to volunteer. You got to have a person that can be committed to it. For me, that's important because each tournament has the same footprint, the same structure and organization. And something that I worked hard to do is to set a narrative of what your tournaments are going to be. And the first challenge I think was that we're such a social and vocal kayak community that we're always communicate with other people during tournaments. But, as a Bassmaster series, what that shield means to some people, I quickly saw that we had to make certain that our events are airtight. So if you have a problem, you go to the tournament director. You don't call 3 or 4 other people to complain about it. You go to the tournament director so that I can do my job to make sure that we eliminate infractions. And that took over pretty quick. The anglers really appreciated it, and it kind of set a narrative. I know me, you, and AJ worked on a big governing body of rules to start working on that kind of stuff because we love team series where you can talk on the phone or whatever. But when you're fishing for first place, it's like 11 grand. And I know a lot of your championships were far more than 11 grand. I mean, you got to make it airtight where an angler knows that they're fishing against a person and not a group of people, which was not a large problem, but there was still like a little bit of chatter about that. And so once that was done, I kind of got ahead of myself. that's, I think, feel like how we made the series move forward a little bit. And as you mentioned, we all can run tournaments. We can all charge $250 for a tournament. But the marketing power of Bassmaster is what has kind of made the series grow, I truly feel, because they do such a good job of being able to highlight the anglers on a platform while we've got kayakers that do a phenomenal job marketing. They don't have the platform that a Bassmaster series does. And that took me a little while to get into that, to understand truly like what Bassmaster kind of is for a lot of people. But I had to step away, and then about 3 years ago, Chris Bowes reached out, and we were trying to find someone to run the kayak series. And as I got to talking with him and my wife, and it just kind of like the Lord opened the door. It was kind of like, what about me, Chris? You think, he said he was glad that I said it because we had danced around it, but I had already had kind of a contract negotiated before John Stewart left, before I left. So we just picked that back up. We got it worked out. And so I was able to come back and kind of rebrand and restart the series in a time where I think, as you all will agree, attendance was kind of nosediving because COVID had passed. We didn't have, money to burn kind of like we did during COVID. We didn't have more time off work because we all had all kinds of time off of work. Even if you worked a regular 9 to 5, you had time off work. And so our attendance was able to stabilize. And I think, as you mentioned, we've kind of hit a balance where we have an online representation. We have a grassroots representation, and then we have a Bassmaster series that, puts on the appeal of a pro series, even though, like you said, we're working on one. But I'm not a patient person. I like to try to go like you do. But thankfully, Bassmaster is painstakingly slow for good reason. It's not an inept reason. It's that they vet everything. They look at it. They have a model where they run lean. They don't have a ton of employees. They don't have 1,000 events. Like right now, I would love to put on 11 events because I want to service every area of the country, but I can't. And by doing that, you create a desire and a hope and a field that wants to travel to fish an event of let's just say 200. I mean, we got a really good average. But for me, the main goal is to always try to put an event on a destination vacation lake for the angler. I want to service a geographic area in every region, but you can't always do that. And then what I feel like I do a pretty good job of is it's like, if I can't come to your area, I'm doing the best I can. We'll get there when we can. We could easily add another event, but now instead of averaging, and it's not necessarily about averaging 200 anglers, it's that now that payout gets to a point where if you finish 11th, you could take home $1,200, because we don't have a lot of sponsored dollars in the community right now. They're all disappearing. So essentially, it's kind of a entry fee level series for now. But as that grows, if we had 7 events, then we're going to average 130, and now first place is down around 7,000. So you lose a lot of money by creating more events. And I appreciate that people want more events because they want to be able to fish a Bassmaster one. But we kind of just have to sacrifice, and it was awful to say, a little extra travel in some instances to continue to grow it, because I think we're pretty close to being able to build an elite series where it's just, let's just say for conversation purposes, 30 anglers at X amount of dollar buy-in for all X amount of events, and then we'll roll with an elite series somehow. But the biggest obstacle is that we don't have a lot of calendar, because we still have to squeeze in your grassroots, your Bass Nation, your Queen Cities, your KBF online stuff, and then you've got Fish Chaos has a ton of charity events on there that people want to try to fish. Tourney X has them too, so it's pretty confusing. It's pretty confusing.
Well, I want to back up a little bit to talk about something you said and offer a little bit of perspective on it, and also kind of both commend you for what you said and simultaneously offer a little bit of a cautionary tale to reinforce what you said but also to kind of stick it in your head should you get tempted to go the other way. So you talked about you wish you could do more events. And I'll be honest with you, man, the biggest Achilles heel that I had when I was doing what I was doing was I was always trying to do too much. And then the more I did, the more I got spread thin. And then what would happen is I would go to all these areas. And then the minute that I would leave an area, it wasn't, hey, thanks for coming last year. It was like, you son of a bitch, we helped last year. Now you're not coming back, you know? And so I really do feel like one of the biggest benefits that you have is that that Bassmaster puts that ceiling on you a little bit so that you can't go too far too fast, because like my dumbass didn't have that. And I was like, but Buzz Lightyear to infinity and beyond. And then I look back and I had created too many events. They were cannibalizing each other. But I think what happened is with organizations like Cast and with organizations like CKA and Queen City and all of these kind of things that emerged from that initial kind of bum rush of the growth, people siloed up, and a lot of people that would have been that second and third 100 to kind of fill out a field found a home in their local club or enough stuff within an hour and a half, 2 hours of where they're at that they didn't have to travel anymore, and they could get that itch scratched. And then I think that when ABF was still trying to, beat the drum for the trail, and then Hobie was trying to do the BOS, and then Bass was doing the series, especially during that hiatus when you were out, it was too much at the same time, because you had that all cannibalizing each other, and then you had all of the toes being stepped on of all the clubs, and it was just an absolute crap show. And so I think that we've kind of leveled out a little bit. I personally said, look, it doesn't make sense for me to try to do a trail, because Bassmaster has the resources. It's got the reverence of that blue trophy. It's got the infrastructure. And so, like, not even selfishly or selflessly, just basically strategically looking at things, I said, it's better for the sport if Bassmaster has less competition for the biggest series in the game, so that we're not cannibalizing each other, which then lets the sport grow. Because if we're all cannibalizing each other, 50 to 75 people, you're never going to attract that blue chip sponsor that's going to write a check for $1 million to where you then can have a true pro series and go on to make this to where, 12, 15 to 50 people can make a living doing this, even if they do sort of work a part-time job. So I actually commend you on making that statement, but I also beseech you to stay that course, because I think if you try to go too big, too fast, that saying, they say those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Dude, I've already made all those mistakes. There's no reason to make them again. And I think that you reinforce the individual Bass Nations by not having so many events to where people then have to go to those events to support that stair step. And then, I'm trying to service that learning how to do catch, photo, release with the more fun stuff and the more prize oriented, not necessarily big payout stuff, to get people incentivized. Because then what happens is they catch 115 inches in a month, and they look over and go, holy crap, I could have competed at this level, which honestly isn't the truth, because catching 115 inches in a month and catching 105 inches in a day are two completely different creatures, right? I want to throw one question at you that Mr. Marbury posted, and he actually posted it a few times, Mr. Kevin Mabry. And I want to preface it a little bit by saying, personally, I've avoided categories and regions and divisions and all that stuff, because divisions do exactly what's in the word. They divide. And so, to answer Kevin's question a little bit, and then I want to turn it over to you to hear your thoughts on it. He's basically commented a few times asking, are these tournaments going to do, certain things to attract the new anglers, the paddlers, the peddlers, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'll say this: you don't see T-ball stands every third batter in the major leagues, because at that level, you're supposed to have already gotten there. So we have small clubs, we have online stuff, we have all of those things that if you want to try to be competitive at that level. So I don't personally think it makes sense at the Bassmaster level to divide up into divisions, the paddle only, the, pedal only, motor only, and all that good stuff. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that because I know you get it all the time, like I used to get it all the time. What are your thoughts on the concept of divisions, motors? Where do we draw the line? You and I have had this conversation offline probably a dozen times, you know what I mean? But I'd love for you to share your insights on your thoughts on divisions when it comes to competitive kayak fishing.
Divisions are something that you can do if you have a big enough body of anglers to do it. We're kayakers. We still don't have 5 million people like the boat world does. So we don't have enough of numbers to do groups of paddle, motor, no electronics, this, that, and the other. The other thing is that if you start doing things like that, say we're fishing Lake Murray this weekend. Now, so let's say we're going to a paddle kayak only. That entry fee, should that entry fee be $250? Well, if it's not, let's say we make it $100. Now you're fishing a $100 bill tournament and you're fishing the same fish that guy who just paid $250 is trying to catch. So now that's not fair to someone who paid more money to fish the tournament. So it sounds good in theory, but that's why we, like Chad mentioned, we have, a national level series, and then you have a Bass Nation, Queen City, that kind of level. And then you have the grassroots stuff like we have in Cast and then some other clubs around the country. Those are for what you would want to call the entry level kayak thing. But I feel like kayaking, motor or non-motor, is still a pretty even playing field that I don't think you should be intimidated to get into a motorized series or a pro series, if that's what you want to call it. Because, at the end of the day, you hear a lot of people say, and just to answer the Quest 3 adventures, I'm looking at joining my local KBF club. Is it worth it? Well, yeah, it's worth it because you're in it for what you're getting to do, which is fish. You're fishing competitively. I hate the word ROI, even though I know it's applicable in life. I hate return on investment. I don't care if a tournament is, and I don't have unlimited funds, but let's say a tournament was $700 or $70. I'm going to fish it. I don't care. I just want to go fish. And so I've never looked at what does it cost to fish a tournament. And when I did do that, it was because I only had an X amount of dollars in my bank account. So I don't mean it that way. But the return on investment thing, I've just never really understood. But I do understand it's expensive. If you want to fish a Bassmaster tournament, and I'll just share this for those that may be interested, you're talking about a $200 entry fee tournament. And let's say you live in the Chattanooga, North Georgia, North Alabama area like Chad and I do. We're in the mecca of fishing. So let's just say we're going to fish Lake Seminole. That's a 6-hour drive for me, probably a 5-hour drive for Chad. You're going to stay, let's say you get Thursday, Friday off of work to practice. So that's a 2-night hotel stay. You're going to spend $1,500 conservatively, at least $1,000. You're going to spend at least $1,000 to travel and fish that. That's where you look on return on investment. So if you're fishing anything other than something 4 hours from the house, because we'll drive 4 hours, fish, drive back home. But for the division question, it sounds good in theory, but we're still a small community, and we don't have, number one, enough people to do it, enough people to manage it, enough resources, and then you get into if we do, non-motorized, well, do you get to compete against motorized also? So now we've got more judges that you have to hire. You've got more tournament management fees, and so it all sounds good. And there was another question. There's not a lot of sponsor dollars in this. There's just not. Just to be transparent, and Chad knows, it's hard to break even on tournaments. It really is. And it seems like, well, you may ask the question that I just said that, well, how do you keep going? Well, it's genuinely because Bassmaster and these other series want to just continue to put on tournaments for people. For us at Bassmaster, thankfully, it's a big pile. They just throw all the money in a pile, and then they do a percentage and budget it out. I have X amount of money to spend on graphics, checks, trophies, stickers, this, that, and the other, judges, and everything like that. And then when we get over that mark, and I need, say, the flags blown away, well, I have to go in and they pull money from somewhere else, and so it's really, really hard. We hear that a lot, you know.
Let me on that topic. Let me ask you something. So this year and probably last year too, like Bassmaster, when you're watching Bassmaster Live and the Elite Series, I feel like, I don't know if it's just more this year or not, but I feel like they're pushing the kayak, not pushing, but they're making people aware, promoting the kayak series during Bassmaster Live. Is that a purposeful promotion that they're doing to try to grow the kayaking, not the industry, but the kayak Bassmaster kayak series throughout the country? Do they see it as like a potential thing that can really grow larger and have like an elite series for a professional side of it? Is that kind of in their future, or what are their views? I don't even know if you're allowed to share, but like,
Yeah,
Bassmaster's view of how the kayak industry can be a part of it.
yeah. Well, he'll I share until I get in trouble, so I don't mind keeping it back. If they don't preface it by saying "Don't tell anybody," then I'm going to tell you. That's how we get feedback, because you know I don't know all these lakes that you all grew up on. You know, I grew up wanting to be a Yankees, you know, shortstop. I mean, I don't know all these lakes that y'all fish, so I have to rely on y'all for information. So, but to answer your question, yes, from the beginning, it's been purposeful, but I feel like when it started, you know, because Bass is such a small company, the social media person, you know, when they're running an elite and we fish the same weekend, man, she can hardly look up, you know. And so I'll send her the things and hopefully she can get to them. Now they brought in another person to help with that. But they do. It's all purposeful, because you know as well as I do, every 15 seconds of airtime costs dollars. Every 1 inch by 1 inch piece in a magazine costs dollars. And so, you know, you can't just expect, you know, if you have people wanting that 30-second space, when they do it for us, it's free. They don't get paid for that, which is great because, you know, we're part of the family too. But yeah, I think the first year they saw, you know, how well things were going, and the angler feedback was great. But last year was the year that we all learned how to speak the same language. And what that takes is intentional conversation, you know. And so you can't just run tournaments. You have to do the admin side. And it's not politics, but that's the only word I could think of. I have to make sure that I'm calling, you know, John Doe and just communicating, saying, hey, you know, what do I need to do to get this on the website? You know, because there's a structure that they've been doing for forever that I don't know all of it. And so I have to figure it out. And they've been very, very, you know, good and kind with information. So, yeah, it's a purposeful thing. After the first year, you know, like Yamaha Right Waters, you know, that was because it's a clean water initiative. Everybody was like, well, that's Yamaha. No, it's not a motor. It's a motor company, but we were the clean water initiative. And so with Dakota Lithium and then now Newport and Native and those kinds of people, and even Old Town, you know, they didn't get the return on it they felt like for a little bit, but it dipped. It dipped for a little while because we did have so much, like Chad said, and Steve Fields always likes to say, we're all kicking the same can. And that's what we were. You know, we were kicking the same can down the road. And for better or worse, we found where, you know, like Chad said, a lot of anglers are comfortable just fishing that $40 to $75 tournament. You know, they've had a taste of a high dollar KBF tournament, a high dollar Bassmaster, a high dollar Hobie, an All American Series. You know, they've had that taste, and now they're okay settling back a little bit. I don't know. Someone's asked me about, you know, why don't we have $500 entry fee? Well, that's going to make more money in the pot if people can afford it. I like the $250 balance. I mean, because the payouts are good. I still only believe in a 10% because that way last place can get the entry fee plus $500 back. If we go to 15%, like some places do, like the boat world pays 30 places, no matter how many. Well, if we've only got 150 people in it, well, now, you know, that 30th place, I'm going to give you your entry fee back, and I expect 15th place to be happy taking home $800. I just, if you're one of the hammers, and I'm not saying a name associated with hammer, if you are a hammer in that event and you beat 200 people, you deserve a lot of money if you're in that top 10. And if you're last in the money, you need to at least get, double back on top of your entry fee, in my opinion, because now at least I got your gas and hopefully your McDonald's to get you back home.
So, Steve, I want to talk about something. You made a statement that's actually kind of funny about you're going to say what you can say until they say you can't. So the double-edged sword for me is I can say whatever the hell I want to about what I've done, but the double-edged sword is sometimes I say too damn much. But I'm going to just say this. I retired from the Navy. I spent 20 years busting my ass. I saved. I grinded. I then made smart decisions along the way. I went on extra deployments so that I wasn't spending money and I was making hostile fire pay and imminent danger pay and some of those things so that when I retired, I would have enough money to not have to struggle. I invested in Hook One, and then Chris Stewart and I really made that thing successful, blew it up over about a 4-year period. And then I made enough off of that sale when the company that ultimately wanted to buy us bought us to give me a 4 or 5 year cushion to make KBF successful. So people, when we first started, would get their calculators out and start saying, oh, well, here's the entry fee. Here's this. Where did this money go? Well, they wouldn't account for PayPal fees. They wouldn't account for the T-shirts. They wouldn't account for the trophies and some of that stuff that at that time either had to come out of my pocket or had to come out of memberships. And we had just started the whole membership concept. And it was like everybody wanted this 100% payout theory. Well, who's going to foot the bill for all this other stuff? So I did. And to this day, aside from the sponsorships that I've done, that I have then worked my ass off to pay off by creating video content and product development and designs and all those things, I've invested pretty much everything I made, both in my 20-year Navy career and in my 4 years of blow and hook one up, to put it back into kayak bass fishing. So people always are online with their little keyboard courage talking about how much money I've made off of KBF. So I'm actually going through the books right now to get cleaned up after the divorce. And I'll tell you how much I've made on it, on the tournament part especially, is a negative $400,000. That's how much I've made. I've invested that much money into it. I've invested in paying staff like Lynette and Hank to help me write about it and run it and do all the things that it would take to build a company like a Bassmaster of kayak fishing, until I got to the point to where I was like, this is insanity. I am never going to make back my investment. I've got to pivot, and Bassmaster is better equipped to do this. But what people don't understand is they see a sponsorship like Torqeedo, for example, when we did the national championship with the $100,000 payout and all this other crazy stuff. And they're like, oh, he made a bunch of money. He sold out. Unless your calculator's broken, you dumbass, I actually put every nickel into the payouts, plus some, plus the staffing to be there and the overhead and the PA system and all of those things. So trust me when I tell you, I understand how expensive it is. So just like the anglers, when they go to a tournament and say between hotel, gas, and food and all this stuff, I'm spending $1,000. Well, multiply that times four if you're running a tournament with just 2 or 3 people to help you, that you got to cover their expenses, you got to cover their meals, you got to cover their mileage. And dude, it is not a viable way to turn a profit. It's just not. The idea was it created an umbrella that made people want to join, to be part of it, to where that would, hopefully break even. And over the next 3 to 5 years, if everything goes right, I will kind of recoup that. But by pivoting KBF more towards a social club and a club that also fishes Bass Nation, that also fishes the Power Hour from Native, that also does that, to where we embolden our members. But I don't want to drive the point home like beating a dead horse, but I don't think people quite understand how expensive it is to put these events on. They just think this shit just falls out of the sky, that a ferry sprinkles dust and the trophies show up and the checks show up and the overhead is there. And then they also don't even think about your time. So I want you to talk a little bit about the time investment, and I'll set the table a little bit.
Mhm.
You're talking about a week per event just to do the event. Then you're talking about all of the lead up and all of the tourism negotiations and all of that stuff. So talk a little bit about the time commitment from a tournament director. And this is not for me to pat myself on the back or you to pat yourself on the back, but what I really want to foster is an appreciation nationwide for how much work these grassroots tournament directors are putting in. That's thankless. A lot of times it's coming out of their pocket, and they deal with all of the BS and aren't compensated for it. So talk a little bit about like being a tournament director, especially for you, because you've done it at every level. You've done it with, TVA, you've done it with KBF as a regional director. Now you've done it with Bass Nation. Just talk about the job of being a tournament director, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, several years ago or 3 years ago, I was able to quit doing a regular 9 to 5 because, for 4 or 5 years, I was doing, all the stuff that we do, working for Dugout and working a regular 9 to 5 job. So thankfully my old boss fished and he got it. And so I had a lot of flexibility there, but, the most time constraining part of any of it is sponsorship stuff because, we're all fighting for that crumb. And then you're talking to a rep that doesn't necessarily understand any of the tournament series is even the Bassmaster tournaments. They don't understand them. They just know that they want to sponsor them. So you have to educate them on what you do. You gotta sell them on yourself and your vision, and you got to get along with them. So that takes a lot of time. Scheduling, the most frustrating part is putting it on paper and then reaching out to a chamber and the other tournament directors that you try to work with. And then all of you have the same date on this one. So that juggling takes a lot of time there. But the Bassmaster stuff is like, I've been done with 2026. This is June, for about 2 months, except for the West Coast event I've been working on. And some of those are carryover events from relationships we've had in the past. But just to give you an example, to kind of probably illustrate your question better, when we were going to Susquehanna a few years ago, Harrisburg, they don't need tournament fishing, just like Detroit doesn't for St. Clair. And so, reach out to Harrisburg, even though Hobie had been there some, it's just, they didn't necessarily get a host fee satisfied, but they have a marketing budget because their tournament series was a marketing series. Well, Bassmaster is a for-profit company. That's why it's an 80-20 split. And so I have a host fee that I have to get. And then hopefully we get enough anglers to sign up that where it breaks even when you get done with expenses and my salary and all that kind of stuff. So I had to get a host fee. So I reached out to Harrisburg, nothing. Got a hold of Russell Johnson and some other people up there, and we got a hold of Lewisburg, and that person was phenomenal. He was a phenomenal bureau person, but he didn't know fishing, but they have a great outdoors budget. And so for 3 months, I spoke with him, educated him on what we do, and he was bought in. Well, then the next thing comes, they don't have event coverage for things like this. So then we have to get with my insurance agent, Bassmaster's insurance agent, and figure out how to build them a policy. And so that was time consuming. So, and then when you get into like the Georgia and Tennessee Bass Nation, so I think I run like 29 events a year in person. Daniel Davis helps me with Tennessee. So he's at all of those. I'm at most of them, and I'm in all of the Georgia. Those ones take a lot longer because, I'm trying to get a host to give us a little bit of money to cover trophy. Because like you, we use the catch trophies. We use the high dollar checks. Our tournaments are pro level when you come to the grassroots stuff because it matters. Because, when I ask you to come fish a tournament, I'm inviting you into my home essentially. It's that personal for me. And so I want you to have the nice things. So we don't get a lot of host fees. And so I have to make it all stretch. And that's the most time consuming part is trying to get the dollars to have these nice things. We used to get tons of product. Like somebody messed around the other day and said I was selling all the Georgia Bass Nation products because we've got some Cincos and some Cuda scissors and stuff. Where used to we had a battery at every event. We had a rod or two, and it's just those days are over because it was during COVID and everybody had money to burn, so to speak, even marketing budgets, and so time consuming wise, most of it's the sponsor stuff. You literally could sit down and put a 4-hour to 6-hour nonstop day into scheduling it because thankfully I got, Joe's a great blessing. I got Joe Heibenrick that does a lot of graphics for me. He's taught me how to do them on my own now, but graphics take a long time to have what you've got there, and use it for every event times X amount of whatever. There's a lot there, and we got Donald and Richard in them, and the Tennessee and Georgia guys are phenomenal. So far in the Bassmaster, it's been, 3 years now. We've had a few issues on the water, setting a narrative of telling the truth, was kind of difficult in a couple of events. But other than that, man, I haven't had really much to have to deal with other than cracked mouths. And that's a testament to what you mentioned. You're getting ready to do the seminar. We all did a good job back. And I know, like Nick Brown, Nick had worked with you for forever. I've been so lucky to work with you, Nick, AJ,
Richard
Ben,
Penny.
Yeah, Richard Penny, Ben Smith, and all the guys at Mountain State Kayak. Man,
Amanda Brannon.
Amanda's phenomenal. I talked to Matthew the other day. I've gotten to work with literally everybody in the country just about, and I take a lot because I don't have self-confidence. I don't feel like, I do a good job at a lot. But if you show me how to do something, I'm going to do it like you and hopefully do it the best way that you do it. So, but doing all of that, it made it to where all the Tennessee and Georgia people, they're so grateful for what we do. And I take it to heart. Like if I can't go to an area next year, it sucks, because I'm like, these people drove from point A to Florida, from point A to Oklahoma, and now we can't give them an event next year. But to your point, you just have to continue letting them know, guys, as long as we stay lean, we can keep our numbers up. The Richard Hank had asked about the non-endemic stuff. Something that the most concerning thing I see in kayak fishing, and this is absolutely the most concerning, and I know we all work for a living, but our social media influencer people are dropping. They're dropping like crazy. I mean, you've got like Louis Delgado that does a great job. We've got Fisher Folk, and then that's just some of the local guys here in the Southeast. But, we got to have that. That's how you get the non-endemics, and the angler, not necessarily relying on Chad or Seth or me to connect them to somebody. Go knock on a door by yourself because, that relationship you make with John Doe is yours. And then, like when GSM, and I love GSM, we work with them a lot. I run a tournament for them. But when all of these major manufacturers started getting bought up by these big entities, so let's just say, Stephen Chad's Tackle Works bought 7 bait companies. Well, those 7 bait companies had a pro staff manager and 20 pro staff people. Well, now we don't need all of them because we're one company that just bought 7 more. So now Seth's lost his gig, because your regional manager got canned because we don't need him now. And that's why it's harder to do the sponsorship stuff. But it's making that connection with the guy or girl that works at company X. That's how you get your sponsorship stuff. But we don't have, and again, I know, and I'm not looking at it like this is the kayak fishing world. This is the kayak fishing world, but we've got this much social media outpouring, and this is the boat world, and they've got this much social media. Even if it sucks, still do it. You'll get better at it, and I'm not even good at doing it.
Yeah, we can
I want to touch on those two. I want to touch on 2 things. One, I want to reiterate what you said, but I also want to share a little bit of insight to, again, one of the biggest mistakes that I made is that I would go out and find 5 or 6 really good partners, Shreveport, Louisiana, Toledo Bend, Paris, Tennessee, Knoxville, Gunnersville, Huntsville. That's probably about it, realistically, Sandy Cooper, okay, Clarendon County. And what I would do is I would get these great host fees from these organizations. But then what I would have to do is cover the cost of going to 6 or 8 places that I couldn't get a host fee from. Assuming that if I did well, that they would come back around. But unfortunately, it's almost like the why buy the cow when you get the milk free. So what ends up happening is those cities that you take a tournament to, trying to foster a relationship, don't budget for it. And because you brought it there and it was successful, they say, why do I have to pay for it? And then, then on top of that, you have to spread your sponsor funds even thinner, because every event still costs the same. If I do an event on Shreveport and I spend $5,000 to $11,000 on the event activation between staff, checks, trophies, dinners, all of those things, and then I turn around and get a $10,000 host fee. Well, if I do one more event, I've already lost money. And I did that. I did Havasu and California and all of these places with really small host fees, thinking that it was going to grow. And I took this, if you build it, they will come approach. And that was the wrong way to go about it. I like what Bass is doing, which is if you keep coming, we'll build it. Right. And that's the smarter way to go about it. But I was in this pioneer mode where, and I'll just be honest, the Joe Hobbenridges of the world was trying to pull on my Cape Dew. We need to slow down. And I'm like, let go of me, man. We got to get up to the top of that mountain. And when it was all said and done, I think that we did something great to bring people together in the community. There's people that know each other because of KBF that would have never known each other. But I'll give you an example, man, on each of because somebody will say, how the hell did you spend $400,000? Well, over 10 years, that's only a $40,000 loss each year, if you really think about it. But I was doing things like a $65,000 national championship television show production, a $45,000 KBF the 10 production to grow the sport. And then what was crazy, and this is going to segue into your other point, I would have 10 people that I spent $40,000 to $60,000 to build a TV show on. I would put the video out, and I couldn't even get all 10 of them to share the video. It's like, guys, like I just spent all this money to grow your profile, and you're not even taking advantage of it. So I don't think we're ever going to get to that non-endemic level until the bubble growth is such that, yes, they invest in the Bass Nation Kayak Series, Newport, Native, and those kind of endemic sponsors that are going to provide the base nut. But until every person in that 200 field is posting on the way there, day 1 update, day 2 update, here's where I finished, here's what was great, you know what I mean? Like, to where the bubble is 200 times what it was, and then that can snowball, we're not going to really ever attract those non-endemic sponsors that are going to write a multi 6-figure deal. And unfortunately, that's where we're at, is the anglers kind of got to take the ball and kind of run with it. You know what I mean? Because the organization can't do everything. Even an organization as big as Bass or Bassmaster can't move the whole mountain by themselves, and I've seen Bassmaster media kits before, because I've had a rod company that I owned in the past where Elite Series pros and Bassmaster pros were sending me their media numbers, but they were also doing their part. They were posting, they were doing trade shows, they were working booths. And, we've got a handful of guys that do that in our industry, but we need a couple of hundred handfuls of them to really move that next mountain. What are your kind of final thoughts on that part of it, Steve?
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. Because I mean, we do it because like we have a very supportive sponsorship system in Tennessee and Georgia Bass Nation. But most of that's prize stuff, but they do make it to where we can cover, like I said, all the nice things. And our anglers this year have done a lot more than in the past, because even if it's just sharing like my post. But the boat world understands, like, let's just say Donald Guthrie's our boy in here comment. When he shares it, if he'll go in and hit at Carl Black Chevrolet of Nashville or at Newport and put that in there, they see it that way. If you just share, but now we need educational tools, and it could just be a short YouTube video that every tournament director puts in their grassroots club. It says, hey, whenever you share, Seth, Steve, and Chad's tournament, tag these sponsors. If you won, we give away a GoPro every tournament. Drew Gregory got us connected with the good people at GoPro, and we're trying to grow that relationship. So it started out with a camera per event. During practice or the event, you upload a catch, cast to catch kind of thing. We'll edit it for you, and we get 2 to 3 tournament. We're averaging 200 anglers. And it's for a free GoPro, and I even make the deadline like the middle of the week after the tournament so that you can get back home and get settled. And, and so, I don't know how you get that to turn around, because like we just talked about, that's the way companies reach out, because, let's say we're trying to go after Ace Hardware. That marketing person at Ace Hardware has no clue about the fishing world. But if you call them, send them links in their email and start a dialogue, they'll start looking and they'll be like, you know what? That's conservation minded because they're kayaking, they catch, photo, release, their graphics look good, this, that, and the other. These people are out there fishing. If it's a bank, well, everybody's got a family. So if you got Smart Bank as a sponsor, well, who's to say that you and your wife don't get together and use Smart Bank to get a mortgage, because you can't just look at it like, okay, we all use gasoline, so let's go after Shell. You have to look at, like what I just mentioned. Well, we all are going to get mortgage loans. Smart Bank marketing director will look at it and say, well, we've got this amount of people in this club. This amount of people are probably married based off of averages. So let's just, now that we've got this group here, we can send them an email. Maybe they want to look for a truck next year. Now we can go to somewhere and get them financed that way. It just takes some purposeful concentration and thought that I just really got good at this year. And it's hard to do when you work a regular job, because we eat, sleep, and live this stuff. But if you're doing like what I used to do, I was in maintenance or a reactor operator for forever. You don't have time to do all that. And so it's just, you just have to do it. And it's not easy. It's not fun. I know you guys do it all the time. I brought my GoPro with me this weekend to go shoal bass fishing, and it stayed in the truck for 4 days.
It's not fun. What it is it's a means to an end. It's a necessary evil. One of the things that I don't think people realized, early on for me with KBF is that all of those sponsors that I had for KBF were my sponsors. Like, they weren't sponsoring KBF, especially early on, because KBF wasn't a proven thing. Well, I was proven in my television show and my content creation and what I was doing, and I was moving the needle. So aside from the $400,000, I also took a lot of my personal sponsorships and moved them into the tournament stuff to fund trying to make it viable. If I had just focused on growing just my YouTube channel instead of worrying about all that crap, I probably have 1 million subscribers right now, and I could do whatever hell I wanted to. That all being said, I still feel very fulfilled in what we were able to accomplish. I do want to answer a question I see over here in the chat real quick from KC Kayak Angler. He asked about regional championships. Would be a great way for KBF members to get together without a long road trip. Any thoughts on that? Actually, yes, we spent the first half of this year kind of revisiting that, and we have 15 regions now. This year, everything is about a baseline. So there's some prizes for the regionals. But just head over to Fishing Chaos and click on Trail Club on the left-hand side. Go to Kayak Bass Fishing, and you'll see the regional series is already there, and we will have championships next year. But again, we're gonna crawl, walk, run, fly. I'm not gonna go spend $1 million trying to make it big. I want it to be more community and fun and less. I want to say less professional, but less professional than what Steve's doing. I don't need the backdrops and the over checks all the way out to 10th place and 5 trophies. And it's going to be fun, and it's going to be engaging, and it's going to be like the old boondoggles used to be. And
Yeah.
my whole goal is to prime the pump on more people. I hate to say it this way, kind of graduating from that to go feel like they can be competitive on the Bassmaster side. I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. My goal is to drop 100 pounds between now and September, set my schedule for next year, and I'm going to go out there and fish a bunch of them as well. A lot of people forgot I can fish. Like, I just doing too much crazy
TD. Just a TD, man.
And I want to get out there and have some fun with it, and do the damn thing and give my sponsors some ROI, and maybe even set the example on how you should be acting when you're going to do a tournament, like a Drew Gregory, like a Christine Fisher, like a Greg Blanchard, like the people that are really doing it are doing it, and then there's a lot that are grinding really hard that just haven't broke through yet. The Jody Queens, the Casey Reeds, the Justin Largens, the people like that I see their effort, I see their grind, and I see how hard they're working, and I respect the hustle. So I just realize it's hard. People don't understand how freaking hard it is. And it's even harder now to develop a following because there's just so much noise out there. Like, there's so much stuff to try and penetrate, but I'll simplify it. Provide value. And there's 3 categories you can provide value in: information, entertainment, and education. And I'll break them down for you. Information just means you're sharing something that you learned. Entertainment means you're doing some dumb shit like busting your ass at a boat ramp so everybody else can get a laugh out of it. And then education is you're teaching them something that you learned or that you came up with, which is taking information, putting it together, and reserving it out from a different perspective. And so to me, it's real simple: information, education, entertainment. Provide one of those 3 things to where if they traded you 3 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, or 30 seconds of their life, they got a value proposition out of it. I think way too many people think, oh, I'm just going to have a camera over my shoulder. I'm going to set the hook. I'm going to show the fish I caught. I'm going to tell them what I caught it on, and that's content. Nope. That's monkey see, monkey do. Content is when you can figure out how to engage and provide value for them, which then in turn provides value for your sponsors. And you got to figure out a way to make it fulfilling, fun, and engaging for yourself, because if you don't, you'll burn out and you won't want to do it anymore. You'll do what Steve said. You'll leave your GoPro in the truck for 4 days, because trust me when I tell you, I've done it. I got 4 hard drives sitting right there in that pile that I ain't even touched yet that I need to edit, because it's a lot of damn work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Steve, I want to talk we've coming up on, we're over an hour now, and I want to try to respect your time and everybody else that's watching. But I got one last kind of thing, and you can kind of do it all together. One, before you finish, and I'll let you have the last word. Talk to us about. I got a
question too, Chad. I got 2 small questions too. Can I fit them in?
Yeah, let's get it in there. Seth.
Yeah.
You briefly touched it, Steve, on a possible like elite type series for the Bassmaster. How far out are we? That's number 1 from something like that, and what has to happen for that to occur? And number 2, the potential for live streaming. Is there anything Bassmaster live streaming in the future in the kayak series? 2 questions there.
Yeah. So the first one had 2 parts. How far are we from it? There's no answer for that one, really, because we're just kind of in the interim trying to format it and see what that looks like. I reach out to anglers to see how much engagement we would have. Feel like we've got about 40 people that could commit to an elite series, maybe need 50, which I think we could get to. What we have to get that is more sponsor engagement. And that doesn't necessarily mean everybody's got to go out and set the world on fire with social media. We just got to figure out a way to convince those people to buy into the kayak world. And what I always pitched, and like my job at Dugout Bait and Tackle, is to get St. Croix to not only give you, I mean, everybody can get a discount, but Seth has a good following. He's a hardworking angler. He helps us sell product. So through our purchasing power, you need to give Seth X amount of combos on the house so that he can go to work for us. And the reason you need to do that is because we're going to market to 100% of the kayak world. If you don't do this, then you're not marketing to the kayak world. You're only marketing to who happens to see you in a magazine. If you work with us, we're going to take you to the kayak world. And if you don't, you're ignoring 100% of the kayak world. I can't give you a number, but it might be 1 million or 2 million people. And if you get 20% of those sales or 10% of those sales, that's 1,000 people times $200. You do the math on that, and that worked for me on the product sponsor for my anglers. And so I try to do that with the tournament series because I brought a couple pretty close to the door with Bassmaster. And then that's the answer to the first question. The
Steve,
second question was what? Yeah, go ahead.
Answer that as well. Because I'm going to take a little bit different angle. You said it the first time around, but didn't say it so much this time, and I'll be the asshole that says it. We're not going to have an elite series until we have 50 people who act like elites. We're just not. We're not going to have it until there's 50 people consistently going to tournaments and they're vlogging their trips. They're posting about gear preparation. They're sharing their tips on success. They're doing lake breakdowns after the fact. They're doing the things that the reason we know Gerald Swindell's name is because somebody interviewed him after a tournament and he told people what he did. He went the extra mile and did it on his own. When we got 50 to 75 people that are acting like that, then we can have an elite series. So it's really more on the community than it is on an organization like Bassmaster to just wave an umbrella and say, we now have an elite series. We kind of need the people to act like an elite series, and then that will lead to an elite series. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah. To an extent, like I want to just like what my vision for it is, and I don't care to share it because it's ain't like we all steal this stuff. We do the same thing. When so let's say we've got 10 people that do what you said. Well, we still need those other 40. Well, if we can get those 40 to commit to fishing, we'll do a workshop. We'll give you the tools to teach you how to do those things because Seth could commit to it, but he's only 30% in on the social side. So let's not wait on that. Let's go ahead and show them how to do it. Like to your point, information, education, entertainment. We can give you the information to do it and the education to do it. And so, that's where I think we're at there.
Kind of funny that you say that, because I probably shouldn't be letting this cat out of the bag, but Darren Wendell and I are launching the Kayak Fishing Advanced Safety Training in probably 2 weeks. It's already a established company, name, business, all that kind of stuff. But on the heels of that, we're also going to be launching a thing called the PSA, which stands for Pro Staff Academy, where we're going to legitimately do what you just said very inexpensively so we can start cultivating a culture of understanding how to better promote, represent, provide return on investment, understand what return on investment means, understand how to calculate it, understand how they're going to calculate it, understand how to have conversations, know how to approach companies. The number one thing I see all the time is people ask me, man, how do you get sponsors? I'm like, well, how many have you had tell you no? Tell me no for what? For however much money you ask for. I've never asked for money. Well, if you never ask for money, you're going to get exactly what you asked for. So you've got to, at some point, learn how to ask. And so we're going to work on that for sure. So Seth, what was your second question?
Just the live streaming, if that has any.
Oh, yeah. So I'm looking, we are looking at potentially moving the championship out of the spring to the end of the year. The reason being, what we've tried to do the last 2 years is make it where the elites are fishing here and we either come before them or after them in proximity so that we can get the elite stage, so that we can get the streaming camera, so that we can be on Bass Live on our own and stream. We've been trying to do that, but logistically, we haven't been able to do that. But if we can move our championship to a date where there's no other bass events, we're going to get absorbed by the Classic simply because it's the Classic. That's what it's there for. That's the Classic. We were just an addition to it. And that's not an insult. We were just an addition to it because the Classic, on my recommendation, was enough of a selling point to get people to buy into the series for some years. Well, now we're here. We're visible. We get a little bit of shine at the Classic, and that's great. We're always only going to be able to get this much because it's the Classic. It's there for the Classic, not us, not the college, not the high school, not Bass Nation, not the team series. It's there for the elites. So I'm grateful to be a part of that. But if we can separate our championship, then now we're standalone. We can get the elite stage. We can get streaming. We can get more camera boats. We want to figure out a way to live stream to the website but if we have the truck there, then we can do that. That's always the holdup, is that y'all see the media truck. That's a lot of dollars. That's a big boost signal. Once we get that, hopefully we'll have it, we'll have the March championship next year. Hopefully we could get an October one established quickly enough, whatever it is, September, October, November, hadn't nailed it down yet. But if we can get that time period nailed down.
Get the hell out of November, because I moved away from your tournament to go move mine to November. So don't come jump in my lap again. Sorry about that.
I want it to be October. I really do, because it does.
And I can fish it. I can fish it myself. Absolutely. All right. So I want to say something.
We're working on that.
I want to say something about this too, because I've actually going down this road. This is something I never thought I would be, is that person that owns 2 phones. So I went out and, got a second phone line for my business. I've been developing this PFD concept where there's a phone holder that you can use for recording your catch, hands free. But more importantly, you can also live stream with your camera, facing out for when you're fishing. And so for this year in the fall, we're going to do a couple of small, 2 or 3 person shootout type tournaments that we're going to live stream. I'm going to go the low tech route because I don't have the money for a production truck like Bassmaster, but for the 10 next spring, the goal is to have everybody outfitted with secondary phones or internet mobile devices, which is all a phone is an internet mobile device. Have them outfitted with a way for that to be serialized to their name. They can stream the whole event, and then have 2 or 3 boats out with Starlink that are providing the network coverage in case there's bad signal somewhere, to where we can live stream. Now, again, a 10-person tournament. There's no way I'm able to ever live stream 50, 60, 70, 100 people. But we are working on that concept because, Steve, I'm sure you remember when Scott Butcher came up with this concept called the 5 Live, and we did that with them through KBF. I still think to this day that was one of the more fun things to watch. And I'll never forget when Jackson Orr signed up for one of them and was out there just giving a play-by-play, stream of consciousness, was about midway through the day and was behind and just systematically just started knocking fish off and worked his way up. And it was freaking exciting to watch. So that segues into my last question. And then this one I'm going to let you handle. I'm not weighing in on it. And then you can take us home with what's left for this season for the Bass Nation Kayak Series through Bassmaster. And thanks in advance for your time. But my last question is, what role do you see, if any, AI and the things that are happening in the world of artificial intelligence playing in the future of catch photo release, from a standpoint of, photo identification, from, angler fish ID? I mean, what role do you see, if any, AI playing in the future of competitive kayak fishing?
So for me on the AI, it'd be hard to do, simply because right now there's not a lot of real information out there on it. I don't see where it can really be advantageous, because we already have the tools to be able to do it. It's like balls and strikes. You're not always going to get it 100% correct. And even AI will still not get it 100% correct, because AI, there was a very interesting several podcasts I listened to recently educating on AI. AI is dependent on what information program system they choose to use to feed it the information. And those are built by databases. So you just hope that whoever is sending that information sends it information to where it's got a moral compass, and then for us, one thing before I forget, the advice for our people is, just because you don't have a Russ Snyder's or Eric Siddiqui name, don't feel like you can't do this. You look, Eric, one of the top anglers in our sport for 10 years, he doesn't have a social media following, but he's got support behind him because he reaches out to people, person to person, and gets that. So don't be apprehensive. It's kind of like, if you're in that grassroots $40 tournament, jump into that national level series, because I did it and I cashed checks in it. All I know how to do is catch fish. I can't break down water great. I don't know seasonal patterns. I just know how to go out and chuck and wind and do that. And so, but for us, what we've got the rest of the year is, we're coming up at the end of July on Lake Champlain in Plattsburgh, New York. And then we close out the season at the end of September on Toledo Bend. So we did that, like what you did for years, the end on the bend.
Yeah, baby.
And so Jason and them all reached out, and because nobody wants to fish in September or October hardly anywhere, but that area you can still do it, and so that's why we went there.
Cool, man. Listen, one of my favorite events that we've ever done in the history of what we did was the end on the bend. It was that family reunion at the end of the year. That's home for me. Like, I grew up an hour and a half from there, but I caught my first actual fish on an artificial lure, first bass on Toledo Bend. My dad used to take us over there commercial catfishing when he got hurt in the oil field and was having to catch catfish and shoot coons at night to make a living and sell marijuana also. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we were living off the land, right? And so Toledo Bend is that special place for me. But it's also, I was at the Toledo Bend event when my papa died. I was at the Toledo Bend event when we lost Rebecca Golden. So it was really hard for me for 2 or 3 years to think about going back there, because like in back-to-back years, I lost a person really close to me on the exact weekend of that tournament. And so it's kind of cool that you're going back there. My schedule's pretty well free. I think I'm going to try to make that event to try to qualify. Do me a favor and try to go to October if you bring the championship to the fall, because I'm trying to stay in November around Veterans Day to tie into the veterans charity stuff that I'm doing. Yeah. And I'm going to keep beating the drum and waving the Bassmaster flag as hard as I can. We're covering it as best we can on KBF as a club and as a media company. And I feel like that's our role as a club, is to support what's going on the national level. We're going to do some regional stuff to make it fun. But Steve, man, honestly, bro, can't thank you enough for what you do. Like I said, if there's anybody else out there that knows how hard it is to do what you're doing and doesn't envy the position that you're in, no matter how much you put on a good face, look in public, I appreciate you, man. I understand it. And we all thank you for the sacrifice, because I know you guys ain't getting rich doing this, and I know you make a lot of sacrifices to make it happen. So my hat is off to you, brother. Appreciate you, and
appreciate it.
Look forward to what you can bring to the table in the future for the Bass Nation Kayak Series and all of the stuff that you're doing on the grassroots level still to this day. So thank you, man.
Thanks,
Seth?
Steve.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Seth. You got anything else? I got a question for Seth. Okay. On Del Hollow, what do you think you could have done for another half inch? Anything different?
Well, so I thought about this a lot since that day. Man, I had one that was like 22 inches on a bed that I couldn't catch, but it was in like 10 feet of water. I spent an hour and a half on that on day 2. I could have spent I had a decision to make at around like noon. Am I going to nickel and dime it on smallmouth out deep, or go hit that one big bass on a bed? And I decided to just nickel and dime it. I mean, I probably should have. I saved day 2 I saved all my smallmouth stuff for day 2. And I didn't go there until probably like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. I hit some largemouth stuff in the morning. So probably go there earlier and rotate on. I had so many fish that were left out there. So it was more of a probably should have hit that area early type deal. But yeah, we came close. I was very satisfied with where I ended. I thought for sure Ewing was going to pull ahead a little bit more. So when I ended up only losing by a half inch, like another half inch, and I would have won, I was like, dang, I was closer than I thought I was going to be. So, but yeah, it was a fun event.
Yeah. See, guys, it's just like Steve said, anybody can go to one of these events and pull off a.
Hey, I have never fished Dale Hollow before. It was my first time. Went up there, practiced, found them, and laid into it. So anyone can do it. If I can do it,
Florida guy. Like, I'm looking at the top here. You got a Florida guy, Ohio guy, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, another Florida, and another Pennsylvania guy. I mean, all out of towners, not historically. It's wild. But I appreciate you guys. Appreciate getting able to be able to get on here. And we'll see you. You get to fish any more this year, Seth?
I was I was gonna go out to Toledo Bend, but now that I qualified, I got 3 little girls. They're 8,
Oh,
8, 7, and 5, so it's tough to travel right now. Definitely gonna do the championship, but I was gonna do 3 events. But now I might just wait around for the championship. So that's
you got to pay them dues at home, but we should be seeing you early next year to start the season. So
I love to hear that.
All right. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Chad. We will all catch up in a little bit. Thank you, guys.
Yep, and thank you to our show partner, Dark Horse Tackle, as well. darkhorsetackle.com. That's what I got second place on Bates on Dale Hollow. So I'm going to end this stream now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chad. Y'all have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Good night,
See y'all later. Bye-bye.